In this year's race for president, the most striking difference between the major candidates was on immigration. With the election of Donald Trump, it's expected there will be tougher enforcement for unauthorized immigrants, possibly including those given protections under President Obama. To tell us what immigrants might expect, at least in the near future, is our guest from the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy, or MIRA coalition, the director of organizing, Liza Ryan. Thank you very much for being with us, Liza.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Liza, there was this once again this year, the luncheon at the State House, people getting together in the Thanksgiving spirit, and this is right after the election. What was the mood like up there?
Well, on that particular event, it was a lot of mixed feelings. We were really happy to have Attorney General Maura Healey there, who offered a really compelling message about how the Attorney General of Massachusetts was going to stand up for everyone's rights, and she was going to protect people, all residents of Massachusetts, including, the unauthorized or undocumented immigrants. And that was, I think, for many of the undocumented and documented immigrants and people of color and anyone who feels like their place is at risk in a new administration, that was tremendously relieving. She also kind of used the opportunity to put out her new hotline for anyone who is facing discrimination, that they can call the Attorney General's office and have a place to report that. So, but aside from that, Chris, it was, people are scared. They are confused. We're confused. Every day we're reading new information. We're looking at cabinet nominees and appointees and thinking, how is this going to impact immigration policy in the next 4 years? And we're scrambling. We're trying to figure out with our partners across the state, legal advocates, service providers, how we can protect people in the state of Massachusetts and make sure that Massachusetts remains a safe place.
Well, you're hearing some reassuring messages from Mayor Walsh, even from Governor Baker.
Absolutely. Yeah, they have. We've had some really great feedback from Mayor Walsh, whose Office of Immigrant Advancement spoke on his behalf. He had prepared a message saying that he is going to protect all the residents of Boston, that he stands with anybody who feels unsafe in this moment, and that he's going to continue to stand by the Trust Act, meaning that immigrants, regardless of the status, are not going to be subject to a type of double jeopardy, where after they are released from court or have done any time for a violent criminal action, that they will then face, after they've already done their time, be subject to deportation via ICE or the Immigration Customs Enforcement.
What about the people who either have protections under President Obama or who are in the process of applying? That sounds like they're in limbo, aren't they?
Absolutely. These are the ones that I think are the most heartbreaking at the moment. And I will say, I have a friend who we use the term documented, so a deferred action for childhood arrivals. So that's people who were brought to the United States as a child. They 2 or 3 or however many years old, but as a minor, they didn't have a choice whether they were crossing a border illegally or overstaying a visa. And President Obama offered a deferred action. So it's a process of going where they're legally vetted, fingerprinted, they're in a registry, they're in a computer system, and they have a deferred action of deportation. That allows these people to basically come out of the shadows. Whether that's now applying for a driver's license, or like friends of mine who are now at Harvard University or many of the universities here in Boston, and are finally allowed to, they're called dreamers. So they're finally allowed to be able to start to fulfill their dreams in the United States. And that's approximately 741,000 people.
We're talking with Liza Ryan from the MIRA coalition. Liza, what about things that people can do to at least minimize the likelihood of being snagged in some way? And I say snagged, I'm not just talking about people trying to escape enforcement who shouldn't, but people who might just inadvertently get snagged.
Well, there's a lot of things. Right now, we're putting out, we're training trainers for Know Your Rights campaigns. So there are issues, and I was just looking again, refreshing my knowledge myself on if Immigration and Customs Enforcement comes to your door, what are you allowed to do? What do you have to comply with? Basically, you don't have to, so if they come to your door, you don't have to allow them in unless they show you a warrant. And even then, you need to make sure that it's signed by a judge. And then you are allowed to say them. Don't say anything that is false that could be used against you, but you have the same rights as anybody else in the United States not to say something. And we are telling people, it's important to get trained in these areas. The ACLU has released a lot of really good information in Spanish, Portuguese, English. I'm not sure if other languages are present yet, on knowing what you should and shouldn't say in that instances. Up to this point in time, Immigration and Customs Enforcement has not been allowed to go into quote unquote sensitive areas. So that would be schools or hospitals. And a couple of other places. We're not sure if that will remain the same going forward in the new administration, but people should still feel free to, take their kids to school. And that's another thing that we've been hearing a lot from the Massachusetts Teachers Association and from teachers across the state who are having kids who are coming into their classroom and breaking down into tears because they don't know if they're safe anymore. I heard a story of a 6-year-old girl who started packing her dolls into her backpack, and when her father asked her what she was doing, she said, "We're not allowed to stay here anymore, right, Dad?" And these are terrible stories, but we're trying to equip people who are, teachers, people who work in hospitals, any of these places where that are providing services for all the residents of Massachusetts to know what they can tell somebody who comes to them in fear.
Now, we're going through a period where there's going to be some sorting about which people should stay and which people should not. What can the rest of us do? Because this is going to be a stressful times, and if you're dealing with people who might be, fine, and yet they're being stressed out by this. What's the best thing for us to do?
I mean, I think it's to be aware. I think certainly at no point in my life have I felt like there's been any moment more important for me to be aware of what is happening in my city, what is happening in my state, because there are differences. You may feel kind of trapped that, these things are going to happen at a federal level. We're still a republic. We still have state rights. We still have the ability to operate at municipal levels, and you have the right to be able to reach out to anybody who you think is vulnerable and say, hey, if something happens to you, I'm with you. If you are afraid of deportation, you're afraid that Immigration and Customs Enforcement is going to come and pick you up, and you have a 2-year-old daughter at home who you're the sole provider for, give me the information. Let me know so that if I don't hear from you in this amount of time, then I need to go to your house and check on your child. These are real issues that people are dealing with, and I think the most important thing that all of us in the state can do is stay informed.
And finally, if people want to get some information from MIRA, there's a way they can get in touch as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Go to our website, www.miracoalition.org. I would also recommend using all the resources available at ACLU. We're having a statewide meeting on December 6th with lawyers and providers and everybody when we're trying to come up and put all of our resources together so that when we come into a new administration in January that we are ready, that we can provide the most accurate and up-to-date and current information, because things are going to continue to change. But we're hopeful, especially because Massachusetts has proven itself to stand on the sides of people who are vulnerable.
Thank you very much for being with us. Liza Ryan from the MIRA Coalition. Up ahead, a preview of rising sea levels.